Hey, y'all. Welcome back. Men the Mind episode. Drum roll, please. Nick.
Are you asking me for the number?
It's 15.
You're 15?
We're at 15.
Holy crap.
Yeah. It's been 15 episodes. Our goal originally was to just get 10 of them backlogged, and we are now at 15. So this is something that would start off small, and we're slowly blowing it up and turning Nick's dreams into a reality. So Alex and Seth, we thank y'all for being here with us. As always, absolutely, y'all like, subscribe, share, anything that y'all find interesting to our viewers, anything you all find interesting, please feel free to send it out to your circle, your people. Like we said before, our goal is just to reach as many people as possible to help bring new ideas, fresh perspective, some thoughts to some topics that you all may not think of all the time. So we're going to facilitate another conversation tonight, and I think it's going to be a hot take. We're talking about the notorious participation trophies, participation medals, the ribbons that the kids get for showing up to field day. So that's where we're at, and we're gonna get rolling here. But before we do that, Alex and Seth, if y'all want to give a quick intro about who y'all are, and then we'll jump in it from there. It looks like Alex. It looks like Seth has deferred to you to start. As a matter of fact, we'll give it to you. I think it's only right. You go first. Michigan was number one, and as you have told us, in the Big Ten, back to back, national champions, number one. So I mean, Alex.
What's the other big one? Three-time what? Three-time what?
Three-time. What'd you say? Three-time.
The game winner.
Okay, the game
back to back beating Ohio State.
There we go. Three-time the game winner. So, Alex, go ahead and kick us off here with a little intro.
Yeah. So my name's Alex. I'm a PhD student. I study education policy. I guess specifically like teacher labor markets and teacher effectiveness. I'm also a former student athlete at University of Michigan. So I talk about Michigan a lot, just ran track there. So also a former teacher. So I have a coach, a track and cross country coach. So have some thoughts on some participation trophies and, I'll save my thoughts for later, but I definitely have some thoughts on it. But I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited to do this.
Likewise. Alex is also another Fleet Feet connection. We're clearly tapping into this whole market. We're probably going to run through our whole team at some point here. Anybody who's been in the Fleet Feet market with us. So Seth, go ahead and intro it up here.
Awesome. Also, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. Second time on here. Glad to be here again. I am an ex-Fleet Feet employee with some of these people here. Enjoyed my time there. Actually got a text the other day that from one of our fellow employees asking me if I still worked there, and I haven't worked there in a year and a half. Anyway, so ex-Fleet Feet employee. I like running, starting to get back into it. I'm a PhD student, first year, so much in my infancy of the PhD land, unlike Alex. But I'm studying sports psychology, more specifically like group dynamics, interdependence in particular. So that's what has kind of taken over my 9 to 5 for the next few years. I went to Adams State, ran cross country there, barely ran cross country there in track and field, and got my bachelor's, and then went to Florida State where I did my master's in sports psychology, where I had the connection with Nick and Ruhi. Go Noles.
Love it. Right. Go Noles. Love it. All right. So let's tee it up here. When you all found out the topic was going to be participation trophies, what were your initial thoughts, unfiltered reaction to it?
Can I go first?
Yeah, you are more than welcome to jump in. Go ahead.
I feel like I'm probably the least spirited on this topic. But when I heard that we were talking about participation trophies, it brought me back to a time when I was in elementary school. I was in 5th grade, if I'm not mistaken. And it was my first year running track and field. And boy, did I suck. I was so bad. And I remember getting last, and I think it was the 800 meters, and I got dead last. I mean, so bad. And I got this tiny little ribbon. They just gave me this little tiny ribbon, that just said participation on it. So like the name of the high school that we were running at, and it just said participation. And I don't know where that ribbon is anymore, but I remember keeping it for a while. So I was proud to have that at the time, at the young age of like 10 years.
Okay. All right, for sure. So we know that Seth is attached to his grade school participation ribbon for running the 800, right? Okay. All right. We can roll with that. Alex, you?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I might be maybe a little bit more spirited than Seth. I definitely have probably some like opinions on this. But I actually had like kind of a similar memory, but mine is not with like running. I was a big baseball player growing up. So just the end of the season or, like all-star games or whatever it is, they would give everybody on all the teams, like no matter where you finished, we would get like participation trophies. And I think I got it one time and I asked my dad, like, why did I get this? Like, because I think like on the day, it was like the last game of the season, and I think we lost. And I asked my dad, like, why did I get this? And I don't really remember what his response was, but that's just kind of like the first memory that comes to my mind when I think about like my experience with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. I never really got it. I don't know. I just never really understood the kind of meaning behind it. I mean, yeah, and it's not a big fan, but that's kind of my like personal first memory about participation trophies.
Nah, totally fair. Nikki D, throw us a bone, man. What's your first memory, thought of a participation trophy?
It's got to be like a field day back in second grade, something like that, where you get a participation trophy for just partaking in the events. I will say the concern for me wasn't really on the participation trophy. I was more stoked to be in the field day. I remember I ran a 100-yard dash. It was really the start of my running career, you could argue. But I think those were the first ones that I can remember. I definitely got it from school before sports. I don't think I played organized sports until probably like fourth grade. So I was a little bit later down the road and then got those for soccer and things like that along the road.
Okay. All
What
right.
about you, Mike?
Oh, man. So I don't remember my earliest participation trophy. For as long as I started playing organized sports at 4 years old, my parents had me in football. I was 4 because the league that I was in at the time, you had the age groups 4, 5, 6, 7s, 8s, and then it would go all the way up to like 12 or whatever it was. So I'm sorry, 5, 6, 7, then 8, 9, all the way up. And I was 4 turning 5. So I was eligible to play with the 5, 6, and 7-year-olds on a team. So as soon as I was that summer, football rolled around, my parents had me suited up. I was out there because I was a tall 4-year-old, so I could hold my own against some of the other kids. So we didn't have participation trophies back then. It was either you won or lost. So that divide and that clear cut line between, hey, there is a winner and there is a loser was established very, very early on for me. So when I got to, like y'all mentioned, field days, some of like we had, I don't know if y'all had the same thing, like Boys and Girls on a Run. I think it was a national program that some schools had. It was to encourage movement in the schools to get kids active and whatnot. That is the earliest memory I guess I have. And that was in like 5th or 6th grade, where it was kind of recreational, go out after school, jog a little bit. But we didn't get participation trophies for those. It was just something that you either did or you didn't. If you wanted to, come out. If not, it wasn't a big deal. So like participation trophies for me, very, very touchy subject. And I think once we get the ball rolling here, I think we'll see some words and some thoughts start to fly about this.
So I want to tell a funny story about field day. I never got a participation trophy for field days because in elementary school, I got strep throat. We only had field days on the last day of school. I got strep throat 5 years in a row on the last day of school. I did not go to one single field day in all of elementary school because I got strep throat. I didn't even get a participation trophy on field days because I did not participate.
So that's why you're so spirited about it. You just didn't get one.
Yeah, there we go. Get into it. Right.
Yeah, I'm like holding some just, 25 years of pent up frustration of not getting a participation trophy from first grade.
Hey, Alex, what we can do once we jump off here, we stop recording. You text in a group chat, you send us your address, and we'll get you a special made participation trophy.
Yeah, make sure it says like 2001 through 2005 field day participation trophy.
We'll get all the details later. We'll make sure to get that to you. Hey, Nat and Rui, those are some things that we can get y'all working on while y'all are hanging out back there. All right, we need to make sure we get Alex his participation trophy. All right. Oh man. Okay, so I have another question, and we're kind of gotta speed it up here. We started at the beginning of our thoughts about participation trophies. How do we feel about them now? So we've all competed in some sort of race, organized sport, event where there is a clear winner and loser, or I guess losers, however you want to look at it. How do we feel about participation trophies now? What value do we place on those?
So I'll jump in. I'll kind of come at it, I think, maybe from like a combination of sports, but also like a teaching aspect. And I think I tend to thread the needle behind like, I want kids to experience, this is a weird way to word it, but this is kind of how I believe. Like I want kids to experience failure, like I don't want them to experience unstructured failure. I think that's important where like, kids should learn how to lose. Being a sore loser is like one of like the biggest red flags. Like a kid loses something, they just throw a tantrum. Exists until they're 30 years old. Like they're still gonna be a sore loser. So, structuring post failure. Teach kids how to fail. Teach kids how to process those emotions, learn from the failure, and improve and move forward. I think that's a really important process when you're younger to learn how to do that. Because I think when in the end of the day, it's just emotional regulation. But kind of from the teaching side of things, like not necessarily participation, but maybe related to it, but just a growth, right? A kid can get last, but if he, on a scale of 100, if you start at 6 and you end at 45, maybe that 45 is last, but like, if he grew the most like throughout the year, like I don't consider that participation, right? Like rewarding growth, and I think is a subtly different than just this participation. I think it's important to separate those two, but just for the sake of like, the T-ball, like, or the, some
athletes
fun run on a field day that's like a mile long, you give everyone an award. Like, I don't know why. Like what? Either I don't know. Don't give anyone an award at that point. Like, what does it matter if it's already for fun? Then like, don't reward anybody for it. But yeah, I still kind of, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think kids should learn how to experience failure and learn how to lose respectfully and kind of lose with honor. And if you lose and you're rewarded for it, like then later on in life, when you like do lose and you are not rewarded, you're like, what? Like, I don't know.
Right.
You know how to handle that.
Yeah. Facts. Seth, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, not too much, but one thing that comes to my head is like, if we don't give kids, which by the way, I just want to put it out there, I do definitely absolutely agree with Alex. And I think there's this notion sometimes that if we don't give kids participation trophies, maybe they feel like they've been kicked to the curb, which is like, oh, I came out of this experience, this sporting event, and I didn't even get anything. Like, I'm worthless. I'm sure they don't actually think that, but to an extent. But what they do come out with it is this experience, like Alex was talking about. They learned something about themselves, about what went well and what maybe didn't go as well, and they know for next time what they can do better, not just That went really poorly, but I got this participation trophy, so that's all right. I'll get these every time. So on with my day.
Totally fair. No, that's totally fair. Nick and I jumped on the phone for a bit earlier as we were doing some planning for this episode. And Nick, you said something interesting about participation trophies. How we can give support and teach, kind of like Alex and Seth have mentioned, how to teach through failure while also supporting. And I think I'm remembering that correctly, but detail that for us a little bit and that idea you had about that.
Yeah, definitely. The internet is lovely right now, so hopefully it stays true for a point. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think I view participation trophies as something that can be good, and I think the key piece is whether it's relevant feedback, more or less. So if you're getting a participation trophy for the sake of giving a participation trophy, I'm not sure how effective that is. But if you're giving a participation trophy in the sense that you're rewarding engagement or teaching through it, effort is a good thing. Or, and I'm going to throw a different example out there that's not as much for kids. I have no problem with medals at the end of like a marathon or something like that, right? In that sense, I'm perfectly fine with the idea of a participation trophy. I think it kind of hits on the idea that, let's say it was Alex mentioned, but you're progressing, right? When we get to the marathon, it's suddenly you are just trying to be better through the course of the race.
Right.
Whereas as kids, that's not necessarily what's emphasized. And that's, to me, where we get in the weeds.
No, that's 100% right. I was going to touch on the marathon topic in particular, because in that scenario and similar scenarios, I agree. I think that the participation trophy or whatever it is that you get at the end is rewarding the effort, which I am all for. And if we understand and teach, we'll say kids in particular, that very delicately, like not to break or fracture their self-confidence or how they see the world of sport, because I think the world of sport is powerful. But if we detail to them, hey, there was a clear winner here and there was a clear loser. Whatever side of the line you fall on, that's where you are. But you're receiving this because of the engagement that you had, the work that you put forward, the time invested into this. And so maybe, and I doubt it would ever happen in this lifetime, like maybe we start reworking the participation trophy if maybe we do an engagement award or a service, how you, I know they have like a hustle award for some sports. Start doing something totally different that actually quantifies and gives some meaning to the award versus just like a participation. Because you can show up and be a participant, but did you actually have to put forth any effort or any energy and be here in this moment, whether it's with a team or by yourself, to get some sort of growth from this experience?
Yeah, and I think like a dichotomy kind of came into my head when Nick was talking, then kind of stuck around as you were going. Like, I don't know if this is fully fleshed out, but it just popped in my head. Like, just the difference between achievement and expectation. So, finishing a marathon, whether you run whatever Connor Manson like ran 208 or something, whether you run 208 or you run 4.5 hours, like. Right. Finishing a marathon. I've never ran a marathon, and like I ran collegiately. Like, I don't know if Mike or Seth or Nick, I don't know if you guys have. Like, I've never done that. Like that would be an achievement for me. And I've competed at higher levels. So, I think that's an achievement no matter how fast you run. So I also agree that's a good example where like everybody who finishes that because they achieved something. But I think my like achievement versus expectation. The expectation might be a little bit less clearly defined there where, I don't know what is a perfect example of that expectation, but the example that comes to mind is like relationships. Like you don't get participation trophy for being in a relationship and not being a bad person, right? Like no one's going to reward me for not cheating on my girlfriend. Like that's an expectation. Like it's a participation and it's an expectation. It's a really extreme example, but like I shouldn't be rewarded for that because it's an expectation that I do it. So I think that's kind of like maybe a kind of delineation there of what may be deserving of everyone gets this reward versus like, no, you don't deserve it at that point.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. I think that's a really good point of, and I would have never thought of the achievement versus expectation piece or dichotomy, as you put it. And I think that we are teaching or have taught, I'll say kids, but society as a whole, that the expectation is if I do something, whether it's all out effort or the bare minimum, I'm expected to get something in return. And I think that's where the disconnect starts to happen. Like you said, like the bare minimum is I'm not going to cheat on my girlfriend. I'm going to be a good human being and be loyal to my partner. There is no, I'm not going to clap for you. I'm not going to give you a pat on the back because it's what you're supposed to do. But again, I think all too often, or at least more recently, people are under the impression that, okay, like I'm doing the bare minimum. Hey, look at me. What am I going to get in return for doing the bare minimum? I don't know where that started to be taught in society, but I would love to see things shift towards the thought or action of put forth real effort, be present in the moments with your people. It's us on this podcast. It could be with your family, whatever the scenario is. Be present with these people, and what you expect to get out of that is relationship, community. You might get, and it's the first thing that popped in my head, like money from it. Whatever the case is, that should be your expectation on the end, is that you get something that fulfills you versus this praise of, hey, just look at me, like I'm here, I showed up.
I am. So I guess one point to Mike, I agree, and I think rephrasing as we always do, enjoying whatever it is for the process of it, rather than just what comes with that expectation. So, like, absolutely, if it's fulfilling, awesome, and keep at it. Right? These things are meant to be fulfilling. It's not necessarily a transaction, and maybe that's another way of phrasing the participation trophy that's maybe more negative. I think there's some nuances there. I am curious if there's any research that you've come across, Seth, or classes, topics that kind of came to mind within some of the last point.
Within the idea of like expectations and achievement, that kind of thing? No, but when I think of expectations, though, which I'm sure you probably have some knowledge about this too, is like norms on a team, especially when I think of cross country. It's like, well, we have the norm of like, well, we show up to practice, we make sure we're prepared, we wear the right things, that kind of thing. Like, we don't come to practice half asleep, though sometimes that happens. But we also come to practice and we give it our full effort. And when I think of participation trophies too, it's like, well, Alex, at the end of every cross country practice, did you get a little participation trophy for coming to practice on time? Probably not. So it's like, where do you draw the line there of when do we get participation trophies? What's so different about a race compared to training? It's like, oh, well, we're still running in both of those. You give your effort on those hard days in practice as well as in that race, but not so much. I actually, not that I'm like an expert in expectations and norms and that kind of thing, but I don't think I've run across any research on participation trophies, particularly at the youth level, since I think that's where most people have their thoughts. But okay, something that came to my mind, and this is probably totally off topic: ultramarathon running. You run 100 miles in some cases, and you get am I allowed to curse on this program? Maybe
You know what? If we need to edit it out, we'll edit it out. You go ahead. Let's give it to us raw.
No. What I was going to say is, like, you run 100 miles and you get a freaking belt buckle for running 100 miles. Not like this cool trophy. Oh my God, it has diamonds on it. You get this little belt buckle that just says, like, where you ran. Oh, Badwater, I don't know, 250 or whatever that.
I think that's like the most ultra marathon thing I've ever heard, though. Like, I wouldn't expect to get a trophy from Badwater.
Right. Yeah. It's like you get to that level of, like, most people, I'm assuming, who run that much and who even put themselves up to that task or that challenge, like, you don't really care that you're going to get something in the end. Like, oh, I got a free T-shirt. It's more like, I achieved that because I wanted to, rather than I put this thing at the very end.
And I could, right? Like, I could achieve it. Like, I actually did that, Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on the like research side of it, so not so much in sports, but in like education, there's a concept called PBIS. It's positive behavior intervention support. Support. I think it's what the S is. And it has very good intentions, and the research is like relatively positive, but the way it gets implemented is basically participation trophies in the classroom. And basically, teachers will have candy in their drawer. So whenever students just act the way they should, they'll get like a piece of candy. That's a really incorrect way of implementing it, but that is the way it gets implemented a lot. And so it just kind of turns into that. And then it actually, so I don't know how this would translate into sports, but it kind of makes behavior on average worse. When it's implemented that way. Like, if it's implemented correctly, which, to be honest, I'm not an expert in PBIS, but so I didn't really do it in my classrooms. But what I saw, and like what I think a lot of other teachers see, is when it gets implemented that way, where it just turns into this, like, if you behave correctly, if you show up on time, if you turn in your paper when you're supposed to, you get a piece of candy. Well, students aren't dumb, right? Like, they might be young, might be naive, but like, kids are not stupid.
Right.
Like, they learn how to manipulate that system very quickly.
Absolutely.
And behavior goes completely to shit, right? Like, it is really bad. And so I'm not saying it's quite that quick or dramatic in a sports setting, because you're getting one participation trophy a season, as opposed to like multiple pieces of candy a day. So it's a really, really rapid kind of, not experiment, but I guess like anecdote of what it could be over a lifetime of receiving these rewards for just kind of being there and doing what you're supposed to do. It just kind of incentivizes not doing what you're supposed to do, so you can just kind of act that way, and then you receive a reward.
I had something.
Jump in.
Sorry. Okay, I found the connection. Okay, so what I study, and this is within sport, but it's interdependence, which is really just like the state of being dependent upon one another. Like, we need to interact in order to do something. So like what I study is outcome interdependence, like the extent to which team members interact or depend on each other in order to achieve some sort of outcome. And a lot of the literature that's out there is based in not only like organizational, like workplace, but also education. And this is what prompted me to think of this when Alex was talking about students in a classroom. There are these two researchers, Johnson and Johnson. They're brothers. Have nothing to do with the vaccine. But anyway, Johnson. They do a lot of work in classrooms, and they studied reward interdependence. And it's really this idea of like, okay, you two work together, and then when you two finish this task, whatever that may be, you then get your reward. And on paper, like Alex said, it's like, oh, on paper, this probably seems like, yeah, it'd work. But then once you get into the classroom, you tell Billy and John to go work together, and Billy doesn't really want to do anything, and so John's stuck with doing it. Then you have, instead of the work getting done, they're just like, there's conflict there. So we had this reward, like, oh, we can get candy. Love candy. But I don't want to do the work in order to get it. So it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do here, Billy? So then it just creates conflict. The point there is like, okay, it looks really good on paper, but then we're just conflicting with one another. We're not actually getting things done. And then, like Alex said, the behavior just goes down the toilet.
Got you. I think those two tie in very well together. Nick, I know you had something to say before Seth jumped in, so go ahead.
No, I think Seth hit a lot of what I wanted to hit. Different theories, same idea. This is a study I jumped in with recently. Was able to pull it up. It's by Roth and Crew, ROTH 2009, and it's on parental conditional regard, which is a direction I kind of wanted to go here, especially when talking about kids and participation trophies, because it's a learned behavior, in my opinion, at least. And I think that leads to a lot of the struggling when failure is present versus a failure-based learning environment, which Alex touched on. But they define two types of parental conditional regard. And it's very similar to like your behaviorism. And so they have negative regard, which would be providing more attention and affection when the child does act or does not act as expected. And then positive regard, which would be when you take away or withdraw affection when the child doesn't act in line with your beliefs. They also had the opposite, which was more or less this, I support the kid, period. That doesn't mean I'm not going to lie about if you did good or bad. I might sugarcoat it a little bit, but the more feedback and authentic approach to looking at performance or behavior. But the interesting thing is what they found is with negative regard specifically, so withholding your affection or love based on actions not being present, it fosters resentment towards whoever is conditionally regarding and a lack of action as the behavior. For positive regard, it turns people into being a little bit more anxious and internal compulsion. So you're doing it to avoid shame, guilt for your own ego and because you want to be better than other people. And that's associated with like this constricted, pressured feeling within behavior. And then the last one, when people just support you regardless of the outcome, you actually see the most creative individuals and they like to explore things and they kind of experience like more choice. And so I think that could be an interesting, addition to the last 2 points that kind of is in line with it.
I'm gonna actually extend that. It's really interesting. So I've been talking a lot about like education space because that's where I live 23 hours a day is in the education space. So, but that like you're talking about like individual level, but that kind of framework exists at like school system level as well, where like these organizations who receive support versus like receive punishment have that same response. So like No Child Left Behind was a really punitive like policy for K through 12 education, where if schools were failing, they got like punished for things. But in 2015, it switched into like this waiver system. I'm not going to give like a history lesson on education policy, but like switched into a new system. And what it is currently now is a supportive system. You can still be punished, but like there's a lot more support. So these low performing schools, there's a lot more supports for them instead of punishments. And like, schools are still struggling, but you see whenever like you look at research, you see actually more growth from these schools when they receive support. So it's really interesting that, that kind of framework of punishment versus, I might be simplifying it, but like punishment versus support for kind of underperformance. The support, even at the system level, as opposed to individuals, still holds true. So I think that's a really interesting point because of how vertically consistent it is. It's just kind of a good point to bring up.
Okay. On the topic of support versus punishment, so this idea that Nick has brought up about conditional action, are there any experiences in particular that any of you have where you felt like you've done something either very, very positive, good, maybe you had an expectation of how you wanted somebody to respond to you, or on the inverse, something very negative where you performed bad or you got a bad test grade, whatever it was, and again, you expected somebody to react a certain way, and they maybe did or didn't. Do we have either of those extremes or any stories on that?
I think I might. This was like growing up in school. My mom was, I think, very good about that kind of stuff. Where like if I would fail a test, right? Like I didn't fail a lot, but I failed tests every once in a while. And my mom, I will take this to my grave. I remember her like response to everything was always like, "Did you try as hard as you could?" And sometimes the answer was yes, sometimes the answer was no. But I'm like, if my answer was honestly like, yes, I did, but I just did poorly, she's like, okay, like that's fine then. You know, you failed and you have to live with that. Like your grade's gonna suffer because of it. But like if you tried your best, like I believe you and I like support you. But the times I was like, honestly, I really didn't, she's like, why not? You know, like I mean, she was never mad, but she was never like punishing about it.
Right.
But she would always ask me that question, like, if you tried your best and you did poorly, that's okay, but you have to do better next time.
Yeah.
If you didn't try your best, like, you better do better next time. Kind of one of those deals.
Right.
So I think that kind of falls into that. And I really like appreciate the way she handled that. So it's something that just has stuck in my mind for sure.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. Seth or Nick, either one of y'all?
Do you have anything off the top of your head, Nick? I have something, but I don't know if it's fully formed yet.
I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat, but I'll jump in.
Well, if you need a second, I think I have one or two that I'm more than willing to share. Give you a little more time here.
Go ahead.
Bet. So I very, very, very vividly. Oh man, this one pains me almost. In high school, freshman year basketball, and like in retrospect, there is no reason anybody should have been this mad, or I should not have been beat up this much about a freshman basketball game. All right, so coming from grade school, some of my best friends. Let me backtrack. Growing up in the city, there were you're aware of who are some of the better players in the city. Like everybody kind of. The cream rises to the top, and there are people that you compete against. Like, I'm going to see them down the road somewhere. And so there were a lot of us who grew up together playing sports against each other at a very amateur level, like youth sports. And as we got to middle school, then worked towards high school, we all went to separate high schools. And some of my good friends who I grew up playing sports with, they went to the school down the road from us, literally 5 miles apart on the same road. And freshman year basketball, they made their starting freshman team. I was on our starting freshman team, and we go to play them. I think we ended up winning the game, but in that game, I just did not have a good game. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I can vividly remember not having a good game, making some like bonehead turnovers. It was one of those games where it felt like everything I did was going wrong. Like I was trying my best, working as hard as I could. Everything I did was going wrong. After the game, we drive back to the school. We get on a bus. We go back. My parents come to pick me up from the school. And I can remember in the car, for some reason, and I don't remember the reason why, but my dad is like, you know, you really nutted up this game. And as a freshman, I'm like, dang, that one hurt. That one hurt because I tried my very best. Like I put forth my best effort. Everything just went wrong. And it seemed very, very ego-centered of him that I didn't perform well because he wanted me to perform well for some of the other parents of my friends and people that we were close in relation with. It was that whole parent thing of my kid is better than yours. All right, well, we're all pretty good. I just happen to have a terrible game this time. And for your ego to get in the way of, hey, like I recognize you had a terrible game. You look like you were working hard out there. I'm still proud of you either way. It was like nah, you really nutted up. You messed this one up. But in the grand scheme of things, what did I mess up? This wasn't a championship game. This wasn't a game where I was gonna make varsity if I played the best I could. Nobody got a trophy. There was no participation trophy. Whatever the case was, that was one of those times where I was like, wow, that one hurts. Because in that moment, like all I wanted was hey, you look like you had a rough game. I've been there before, and I hope you bounce back from it. Like that to me probably would have had so much more of a, you know what, I feel really loved in this moment versus nah, you nutted up. You messed this one up. So that's my story on that one.
I think that's a good one. I don't know if I can top that. Yeah. But I think there is a sense when I look back at different coaches and even different teachers, and a general theme would be like how close they talk to you after a performance, or whether they sort of brush you off. You know, as coach, maybe you sat together on the way to the meet, don't have a great race. Coach doesn't want anything to do with you after. And I think that resonates with me a little bit. One, because I just didn't race well on game day. But two, in my head, that made sense. I deserved that. I did bad. You know, I'm my biggest critic. And that really is a tough way to be viewing your own performances in opposition to Alex and Mike's examples, where you're able to see that your best was enough. I didn't even get to the question of, was that my best? I was just like, man, I stunk today. And that's a really tough thing to take, and might even tie in pretty well with Alex's early point about how do you teach somebody to fail? What does the structure look like when you do fail? And how can that be a positive thing instead of a not good enough?
So that, go ahead, Seth. You got something?
Okay. What I was just going to say, just on this topic of like doing really well, getting feedback, or doing really poorly, did anyone support you? I think why I may have had just a trouble answering that question is I feel like throughout my life, not only my parents, but my cross-country coaches were really good at just like praising the effort and not necessarily the outcome of you got first. Like it essentially, the placement never mattered. It was mainly about, did I give enough effort? And I guess where the issue, I don't know if it's necessarily an issue, but what I remember the most was at the very end of my time in high school, we were doing this time trial. And I really wanted to, I think it was break like, I don't know, 4:20 in the mile or something like that. And I didn't even come anywhere close to it. I mean, it was so bad. But I tried so hard. I think I was just like amping myself up before the race, and then I just crapped the bed when I actually, got onto the track. But I remember afterwards, the people around me, my teammates, my coach. Actually, I don't think my coach was involved, but my teammates were like, "Oh, it's all right, it's all right." I'm just thinking to myself, like, no, it's really not. So this is really not okay. And I guess that was like a verbal form of a participation trophy. It's like, hey, well, at least you finished the mile, sort of thing. And I think going back, that was one clear time in my athletic endeavors that I wish someone would have just said, like, yeah, that was pretty bad, but we're going to bounce back from this.
Go ahead, Alex.
I was say, I think I have like similar things with that, and maybe not as specific of an example, but there are times where like I know that I did not do well for the expectations that I've set for myself. Whatever activity it might be, whether I like ran a race, like I don't know, I didn't run the time that I wanted to run, and then someone would come to me like, "Wow, you did really well," and I'm just like, "No, I didn't." And like, that's okay. Like, I don't need you to like coddle me right now. Like, I'm okay if you like, I don't want you to like berate me, but like, I'm okay if you say like, hey, you did poorly. And honestly, like something I really appreciate right now is like my current advisor doesn't do that. Like, she is not warm and fuzzy. And I'm very on board with that, where like, if I am writing a paper and she's like, this is really bad, she's going to be very honest about it. She's going to give like very constructive feedback. She's going to help me make it better, which is a really important part of that. But she's going to first say like, this section of your paper is bad and I don't understand it. but then she's going to be like, let me help you fix it. Here's some things that I'm thinking about it. Right. And that's that important piece of it. But I the way you said that, or what you said, very much so resonates with me of like, I want you to tell me if I did bad. Like sometimes I'm probably my harshest critic. So like, I'm going to know if I did bad, but like if for some case I don't already know it and I did, you need to tell me.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to bounce off that, especially in the sense of like supervisors at this level. This isn't my supervisor, but there's another person in my lab who his supervisor had a supervisor. It's a whole long lineage of supervisors. And when he would give papers to his supervisor, when he was doing his PhD, his supervisor would read the paper and would just give it back to him and just say, try again. And that is the only feedback that he ever received until it was quality enough. And so along or bouncing off of Alex's point, I do agree. Like it's okay. I want my supervisor to tell me this was really bad, but I would also appreciate that constructive feedback of this is how we move forward, not just like, yeah, try again. Like come at me with a better product next time. I'm sure this guy did come back with a better product, but the time wasted just like being anxious on, oh, is this correct? Is this not? I don't know. We'll find out. Let me send it to him and probably get it right back, and we're back at square one.
No, I think all that's good. I want to tie all of these three things in particular together. So we got time and place for feedback and evaluation. Alex, you talked about the growth and what it takes to get to the point of knowing when you perform well, when you don't perform well, what feedback you want somebody to give you in that moment. Like that takes a lot of growth and personal development to understand that. And then the trusted people that you have in your circle to give you that feedback. I think those things are super important and can be tied together. And it seems so simple as I kind of write this out, but it's the who, what, where, when, and why. Because who's giving you that feedback? Is it a random person that's coming up to say, oh, wow, you ran so great when you know you didn't, or you performed extremely well, and a parent from the other team, whether it's sarcastic or not, oh, you really had a great game, didn't you? It's that who, like who is able to tell you and give you that information? The what are they saying in those moments? What words are they giving you? Is it encouragement? Are they berating you? Are they looking to help build you up post-performance? Where? Is it directly after the game? And I'm actually taking a 12-hour coaching course right now. Like this is probably it's probably longer and much more daunting than any college course I've ever taken, just purely from like a time standpoint and when I have to get it done. But it's 12 hours of coaching certification that I need to help out at my high school. And I literally just went through the assessment of feedback and evaluation. And so that where is very important. Nick, you talked about being on a bus with your team post meet, post game, post race, whatever it is. And your coach maybe not sitting next to you as he typically would if you performed well, if this was on the way to whatever sporting event it was. In those moments, sometimes that where is important. Like, I need you next to me in this moment to maybe let me know, hey, look, I know you didn't have the greatest performance today, but it's all right. We'll talk about this at another time, a more appropriate time, in a different place, in a setting where we have deemed, hey, this is where we talk about this. All right, it's after the race. You're already down. Let's just worry about you fueling up, recovering, and we'll get to this tomorrow. Like, it can wait till tomorrow. It's not that important enough for us to handle right now. Or at least we need to think through a couple more things before I give you this information. That was like the when and where, and then the how and why are also tied together. Again, how is this feedback coming, and why are you giving it to me? Is it something I'm seeking right now, or is this something that I'm avoiding? I think both those things are important, and they help you grow. Like, are you like Alex? You said, hey, I'm seeking truthful information about this paper that I just wrote. You have a trusted advisor. You said, this is what I want. You have explicitly said, this is the feedback I want. This is how I'm going to grow. But it took you a while to probably get to that point versus somebody who is avoidant. I know this probably isn't my best work. I'm gonna turn this into my head down and I'm gonna just walk away, and then I'm gonna hopefully come pick this back up, throw a hoodie on, like duck my head, and I'll go read this stuff by myself. I think there are a lot of different dynamics that are working in this, but all those can be tied together in that same arena.
Yeah. Something that kind of popped in my head as you were like going through that, like, providing that feedback is really difficult, right? Like, whether you're, I've had experience just giving that feedback to coworkers, friends, athletes, like as a coach, athletes, or as a teacher to students, like providing that feedback is really difficult and really time consuming. And honestly, like it requires a lot of critical thinking. It's not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but it is really difficult. So kind of going back to just the very beginning, like participation trophy stuff, maybe it's a little bit of like a hot take, but I think some way of looking at it is a participation trophy is a excuse to not provide that, right? Like, all right, here's this thing that I'm giving you as a reward just to make you feel good, as opposed to like me putting in the effort. Like I've never really thought about this either, but until just now, so it's not a complete thought, but like, that it's so difficult to provide meaningful feedback. It really is, but it matters. And so I think, that participation trophy might just, sometimes be used as a substitute, right? Like you get this immediate reward and the kid feels good and they're happy, but maybe they lost but they feel happy because they got a reward, but like they deserve that intensive feedback. They deserve to think about what happened and they deserve to kind of hear feedback, I guess. But
that's good. That's really good.
I think that's a really interesting angle. What came to my head, I don't know if we touched on it on the podcast, but I use it sometimes when teaching. The movie Good Will Hunting, I like because there's like 4 different of the same conversations going on at one time. And so the main character has a professor, he's got a therapist who's truly his friend, he's got his best friend, and then he's got his romantic interest all at the same time. And the whole movie really bounces the same conversation through those 4 people, and each time it's like a different person that gets through to him. And I think talking about the who, what, where, when, why, how, I forget which ones it was, but talking through those pieces of feedback, people don't like the idea, but I think it's valid that there is a right person for feedback some of the time. You can do everything on your end. Like I can give Mike all the feedback and phrase it as nicely as possible. But at the end of the day, if Mike doesn't want feedback from me, like that's that. And that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just understanding that. And I think, to Alex's point with feedback as well, it is super tough. It's really hard to nail it down. And I go to phrasing because I think it drastically changes how they receive your feedback. But I think the other piece, and we'll see if this reconnects. I can't tell if it's working or not.
Oh, you're in and out. I think Michael's on. Mike's on mute. Looked like he was saying something.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I was hoping that it would come back in. I think you're good now. But you on the roll.
Persevere. I think the other piece with feedback is how often is it a 2-way street versus a 1-way street? What if you start like Alex's mom did with a test and involve the other person in a conversation rather than, hey, yo, that was bad. Hey, yo, that was nice.
I mean, I think that's a difference between coaching and teaching and just telling, right?
Yeah.
Like I can tell my athletes to go do this workout, but if I don't coach them how to do that, right? Like, coaching is different than just writing a training plan and just telling them to go do something.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I would like to build on what Nick said about it being a 2-way street. How do y'all feel? I guess this might just be a new conversation starter. How do you feel if you're a coach and you have an athlete who went out there and ran, whether they did well or did poorly, before even providing feedback, you just say, what do you think of that as the athlete? What do you think of that performance? And then they answer. And then as the coach, you build off of that. What do y'all think of that?
I really tried to do that. I was not perfect about it, but it was something I realized about halfway through like my coaching tenure, my 3 years of coaching. About halfway through that, I kind of started to realize like I have really high expectations because that's just how I view myself. So sometimes that spills out into the way what I expect out of other people, which is not the best way to go about it. So I kind of realized that, and I was like, I literally exactly what you said. I started asking like the kids, like, what do you think about that? Like, are you happy about it? And sometimes they were like, yes. And sometimes I had to have honest conversations with them where like, I think some of you are aware, I don't know if you all are, but like I had like Hobbs was a really good example of someone who like I knew was going to be a really good runner. And if he was like, yeah, I was really happy with that. I was like, dude, no, that was really bad. But like he is an example of someone like you can kind of have that honest conversation with, but some of the other guys be like, cool, man, like I'm glad you're happy, like I'm happy for you too. I think that's a really important question to ask in that scenario for sure.
Yeah, as I'm learning more about giving feedback and opening up the conversation and making it a two-way street, that's actually something a learning or a teaching method that is recommended to get the most out of whoever it is, whether it be a student, a child, a student athlete, whatever the case may be. Opening that conversation up and not giving them a chance to answer with, I don't know, not allowing that to be an acceptable answer. It really creates this dialogue and it stretches it wide enough so you can insert yourself where you see fit to give more, like Alex said, meaningful feedback. And I think that's a really, really important point that I don't want to gloss over, is that the feedback, it can't just be, oh, okay, you did X, Y, and Z, and you just kind of move on to the next person. Like, make it detailed, make it specific, make it meaningful to that individual so that they know that you care. Like, and I'm sure y'all have heard it many times. People really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I've found that has very much so held true, whether it's in sport, in the professional, in the workforce. I'm sure y'all have seen it probably in the military. Some like people want to know that you care about them and that you're invested in them. And once they see that you're invested in them, they are more receptive to the information that you're trying to give to them or the conversation you're trying to have.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that the difference between a one-way and a two-way street is often the priority. And so are you prioritizing the person or what they do? And then we get into that conditional piece a little bit. If you just want a team that performs well and that is your goal rather than to support the individuals, it has different effects on how they're going to regard you. And I think in the workplace, it's the most common. Your manager is likely hoping you succeed. That benefits them, that benefits the company, right? So if it's weird for your manager to just be there hanging out with you and you're anticipating feedback, that's a tough spot to be in. Whereas some of the more positive workplaces that I've been in, it doesn't matter if Mike's there. I can still do whatever. It's just, it is what it is. He values me as a person, so we're going to be all right. I don't need to be on my A game just because they're in the room and add that internal pressure, if you will, on myself.
I think that, like, I just want to kind of reiterate, like, the importance of showing people, especially in, like, a coaching, teaching, parent. Okay, I'm not a parent. I don't want to speak too much on that. But, like, anytime there is a hierarchy of, like, relationship where, you are potentially giving harsh feedback at times, like, showing you care, like, it is so important to do that because feedback can be like harsh at times. So it's so important to show them that you care and like you want them to succeed however they may define success, like you want them to achieve their version of success and show them you care, because there will come a day where you have to be like, well, like that was really bad. You know, we got to pick up the pieces a little bit. And that is a more difficult conversation if like they don't believe you, if they don't believe in you. But the other side of that is like, I don't know, maybe this is like a weird thing to say, but like the bar to show people, like students and like kind of younger athletes, the bar to show them that you care is so low. And I mean that in a good way. Like, it is so easy for you to show students and younger athletes that you care about them. There's no reason for you to not do it.
Yep.
And it's so important. It's just fundamental to any trust or future relationship or, you know, success, whatever it is. So, you know, build
I want to add on to that real fast, talking about the bar being low. I've been coaching probably for time span of 2 months, like actual coaching days. We'll call it 15 to 20. Our season starts February 20th, and that's when we have to officially report for practice. And the difference that I've seen in 15 days of being with guys, the first couple of days I show up, everybody's pretty closed off. Nobody's really talking to me or interacting with me in general. But when I go for it, I'm, hey, how was school today? Okay, cool. There are simple questions. Well, what'd you eat for lunch? Okay, cool. Like, did you make that? Did your mom or dad make that? What do you have going on for homework? And I love to run with my guys, because that's where I think like the truth comes out and we're all in this moment together. It is that side by side of, wow, he's doing this work with us. But literally in 15 days, I've seen a world of difference where they will actually approach me and now they are pulling conversation out of me versus it being me pulling conversation out of them. Like you said, Alex, that bar is set so low, and they want to know, especially people who are younger than us, and are looking to be where we are. They want to know that we are invested in what they're invested in. Simply asking like, okay, like, what's your goal for this? How can I help you accomplish that? Those two questions have taken me so far already. And I encourage anybody else that's leading a team, coaching, wanting to get into leadership, mentorship, ask those two questions. Like, what are your goals? How can I help you get there? And people open up very, very quickly when they feel like they have your support.
Yeah, the amount of I can't even count the number of students that, you know, trusted me because I said hi to them in the hallway.
Yeah.
Bar is low, right? Like, a lot of students just get ignored walking through the hallway. Just say hi to them. Be like, hey, how's it going? And then like, they don't even say anything back, but like, I'll see them like show up. I mean, not anymore, but like, they'll just come into my classround during lunch and just be like, can I eat here? Yeah. Right. Like, of course you can.
Right.
But just like, because I said hi to them. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, I think those are two great questions to ask them. And, but I mean, that's, even those questions are like, the bar is lower than that. And I hate to say that, but like, you know, some of these kids just do not experience even that level of care. So when they get that, just being said hi to in the hallway, it's just like, it's incredible. Not all students, but like, there's a couple, there's some out there that just need to be said hi to.
For sure.
I know
Seth, any other thoughts around? You got another thought, Seth?
So an example that I just experienced last semester, given that I'm in my first year of my program, and my supervisor, I've only known him for a semester and a couple weeks here, but there was a moment that things definitely turned around. Not that anything was bad at the very beginning, but it was kind of that closed off aspect that Mike was talking about with his new team. We're roping in Florida State here. So it was, I don't know, we were like 2 months, let's say, maybe not even 2 months, like 6 weeks into the semester. And I get an email at like 8:40 p.m. on a Friday. And he says, big matchup, for FSU tomorrow, like, good luck. Not that I'm, on the team, obviously. But that mattered to me so much because it showed that he cared about me more than just a student of his, and he's not a Florida State fan, doesn't even follow college football, but somehow he found out that FSU is playing this weekend or that weekend and cared enough to send me a text or an email, and then also sent me an email afterwards when FSU won. It can guarantee you he didn't watch the game, but he also cared enough to follow up, and say that, good win, whatever. Really good job catching all those passes, Seth. And then I came back to school, motivated and ready to go.
I like it. Something right, like Alex said, the bar is low, but that's something simple that shows he's invested in you, and it builds a connection. It builds a connection. So that's good. Nick, any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions that you guys have presented, and just generally speaking, I would sum it up into taking interest.
Nick, I think we're losing you. You're pretty frozen.
That's all right. It's a tough night out here on the laptop, but
it's all
I think
good.
a lot of
It's all good.
a lot of the research that I look at is just defining it as taking interest. And so this idea of, if you can show interest in other people, a lot of benefits follow. One of the easiest ones is, if a teacher takes interest in a student, the student takes interest in the material, which is pretty cool, instead of them just wanting a grade. And similarly, the parents that take interest in their kids, studies show, not me talking, research I've seen talking, good clarification point. I'll follow Alex's lead on that. But, when parents take interest in kids, the kids have better self-regulation and emotional regulation over time. And so it just, oh, wow, they value me for me. That's pretty cool, which is just the opposite. And it does sound easy.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to say it is that easy and we just don't do it? I don't know.
I think simple is different than easy. It is that simple. Like, I do believe it's that simple. It's not that easy.
Yeah, that's good. That's fair. Well, as this topic seems to be wrapping up here, I want to go around the horn and do a couple action items for the week. We've gotten through participation trophies. I think the bulk of this started to sit around support versus punishment, kind of rooted in performance. How can you all be more supportive? Two questions here. How can you all or we be more supportive within our communities this week? And maybe one that's a bit harder, more challenging for us is, how can we solicit support or open up to our communities this week? For that question, I'm thinking kind of more from a personal stance. I know that I freely give support. Like, I'm cheering for everybody. I want everybody to do well. And it probably sounds a little self-sabotaging. There are often times where I'll go at stuff by myself in the dark and do my best to make it happen without asking for support, help, anything like that. And I don't know the science behind it. That could be a guy thing. I think I've experienced that more with some of my guy friends and community-wise like that than some of the girls that I know. So those two questions: how can we be more supportive, and how can we solicit support this week?
I have an answer to the first one for sure. So my immediate circle here in my lab, there's only two guys really that are in my lab like every day with me, and I think one way that I can support them is just like make little reminders for myself about things that they have going on this week. Like, for instance, one of them had a stats test. So it could totally, it's water off my back that he has a stats test. Like why should I really care that he has a stats test? But what I can do is, okay, I know it's tomorrow, for instance. And I know what I can do is, as soon as he enters that door, I can ask him, oh, how's your stats test? Knowing that although it doesn't matter that like what grade he got on this test, but I want to show him that I care about him and what he's doing in order to, get to the point where
Right.
he's like doing his thesis and so on and so forth. And that's just a
Right.
little thing, like just a little reminder, 8 a.m. on Friday, reminder to ask blah, blah, blah about his stats test and how it went. I think that's one way I can definitely support the people around me in a very simple way.
I can take a stab at one as well. For me, it's back to phrasing in a way. Really easy to ask, how was your day? Make an intentional effort to phrase the question as, what was the most interesting part of your day? What was the best part of your day? What's something that brought you joy yesterday? Something like that, where there's not as much of an automatic response. Like, now you're going to have to actually think about this instead of just say, living the dream,
No, that's real good, Nick. That's real good, because I definitely fall into the trap of, if somebody asks how my day was or is, it's good, it's cool. I'd love to say it's average, nothing great, nothing bad happened, but it doesn't require any more of an explanation than that. So that rephrasing is powerful.
Yeah, and I'd like to build on that too. It's kind of the idea of like, when you create an interview guide for a study that you're trying to do, like, you don't want to only ask them, closed-ended questions. Then you're gonna come back from that interview and they said yes, they said no, they said yes, they said no. When you ask them open-ended questions, we get all these rich experiences, and then we can also build on that. Oh, they mentioned this when they answered this question. Boom, that's my next question. Oh, when they answered that question, boom, that's my next question. And then right there, we're just building more and more support. I know more and more about you, more and more that we can talk about together.
That's good.
I think I should have answers to potentially both. So kind of providing support is actually more of like a reflection, like in the moment, right? I said this before. I tend to, I guess, grade others based on expectations I have for myself, which isn't fair to other people, right? Like the way I view myself, what I want to do, and I have this in my like in my grad program all the time, and it's something that my advisor kind of checked me on one time, where she was like, "You like what you want to do and how you view yourself and the expectations you have for yourself are not the way that other people want to go about this program," and I was like, I know, but also at the same time, like, I'm glad she said it, because like I knew it, but it never really like set in. So I think, talking to people and, where they're at, I would never go up to someone and be like, you're worse than me. Cause like, they're not, like, they're in a PhD program as well. Right. Like, we're in the same spot. We're learning, we're trying to be better, but just checking myself and making sure that I'm not thinking about what they're doing through like the lens that is my expectations of myself, right? So I think that's probably a way that I can kind of give support to other people, not framing that support through what I want for myself. Kind of the way to solicit support kind of goes back. I don't know if we were talking about this or not, but a lot of times feedback is negative. We very rarely does anyone ever provide positive feedback. Not everyone, I guess not everyone is like that, but I think it's really easy to provide negative feedback about a paper or a result or something, but, or providing feedback on like what to change about something, but, asking for like, it might feel a little weird, but it could probably be something that's normalized, but just asking like, what's good about this? Especially in my case, like right now, like rejection and things that change and feedback and like negative feedback is just like name of the game for like my field and my interest and what I want to do. Just like every once in a while, I could probably ask like, all right, I hear that all this needs to change, but like, what's good about it? Like, just give me something to hold on to. So I think soliciting support for myself, maybe that.
Fair enough. That's good. I like those. I'll wrap us out with being more supportive. I'm going to take on Nick's approach of rephrasing. I think you've said it before, Nick, but I don't think it really set in until now. That question of like, what was the best thing that happened in your day, or what did you enjoy most about your day? I think those are two really, really good questions versus just a simple, how was your day? I think those have been very, very overused. And at this point, they're essentially meaningless. Like, people don't find any value in it. And it's just, you can walk by somebody in the grocery store, hey, how's your day? And literally just keep walking past them and not even really care for an answer. But to take that time to, hey, well, what was the best part of your day? Those words are not often what people hear. So I like that a lot. So I think we'll work that in. And then soliciting help for my or not help, but support for myself. Just kind of being honest about maybe where I'm at, what I might be struggling with. Like, I called Nick earlier today and I told him I haven't had a quality night of sleep in probably 3 weeks. And for me, opening up and sharing that is a lot. So just to be able to know that I can trust Nick, like, yo, I've been getting in bed, but the quality of sleep that I've experienced, it has not been great. And your boy is fighting right now. So again, just having the transparency to be honest about what it is I'm experiencing, and I guess like the support I'm looking for. Like Nick, he just by listening, that was perfect to me. And another time it may be, yo, I need you just to have my back for a minute, take the lead on something, and we'll roll with it. But it looks differently. But I think those two things would be A1, and I think we'll see a world of difference in all of our communities if we can tackle those this week.
Yeah, would. Yeah, I'd build on that even a little bit too. I know for me, one thing that I really struggle with is if something negative happens, like I don't really share it. I don't know how much to share the positive either. I like to talk, but not necessarily as much about me. But especially when something negative happens, probably not the first thing that I'm going to share. And so being aware of that and pushing myself to, at least find one person that you can share that with, because as a start.
Yeah, we've said it many times before. It's one day or day one. So just got to start sharing somewhere, somehow with somebody. So I think with that, I think that wraps up episode 15 for us. Alex, Seth, we appreciate y'all jumping in. Again, Seth, welcome back. Episode 2 for you, Alex. Congratulations on finishing up episode 1. We'll definitely have you back.
Appreciate you having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. This has been great. So again, y'all, as always, if there's anything that you want us to answer questions about, or a topic you want us to cover, please feel free to message us, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Drop a comment, like, subscribe, share, send it out to your folks, and we will catch y'all on episode 16. We out.